When I come to your city, I'm a new score. Broke your high score soon as I step through the door. Tryna stack my paper up like a bookstore. Money kissing each other like a rock and roll tour. When I come to your city, I'm a new score. Broke your high score soon as I step through the door. Tryna stack my paper up like a bookstore. Money kissing each other like a rock.
Hey, Tyler.
Hey, Piet.
What's going on? Welcome to the New Score podcast. My name is Pat. This is my co-host, TYG, Tyler Pratt. Tyler, how we be doing?
Fucking terrible. The power's out here, windstorm. I'm in my car recording because I have no other option. So bear with me, but could be better. I'll rephrase that. Could be better.
Could be better, could be worse. Appreciate you, joining me tonight in your car. I know it's not ideal. The vibes are a little low with the weather and the power being out, but it's good to see you. Excited because we got a lot to talk about. We got playoff football in the NFL. We got the Michigan Wolverines, national champions, and we got a ton of coaching news to talk about tonight as well. Nick Saban just retired. We're going to get into that pretty soon.
Crazy.
It's Wednesday right now. This will be out on Friday. And by then, there could be massive more moves to come. Still waiting on Belichick right now, too. But questions with a fan, Kansas City Chiefs edition, second half of this episode tonight. Excited to dive in with our boy Tyler Albrecht, talk about some Kansas City Chiefs. Biggest Chiefs fan we know by far, and it's been for over 20 years knowing the kid. Just been a diehard ever since I met him. So excited to catch up with him, talk some ball, talk some Chiefs. Tyler, congratulations, Michigan Wolverines. 34-13, defeat the Washington Huskies. Before I let you talk about it, just want to say my thoughts on the whole thing. I said I did, before the playoffs, take Michael Penix and the Washington Huskies to win it all because it was plus 700. To me, you give me the best quarterback out of the four teams, plus 700 odds. I'm going to take that every time. So I did, and I felt really good going into that matchup on Monday, but what I was afraid of was Michigan dominating this game up front, and that's exactly what happened. In my opinion, Michigan just bullied them, O-line, D-line, getting whatever they want in the run game, just like they have been all year between Corum and Edwards. It's a really tough tandem to stop. JJ made some throws when he had to. I mean, not a great game, but kid doesn't have to play great. On that team. It's a great football team. They deserve to be national champs. I did think the game could have been a lot better. It felt like Washington, every time they had like that opportunity where they were going to do something, it was a drop pass or a missed throw by, a couple yards, or throwing it on the outside shoulder when the guy's running on his inside shoulder, stuff like that. Johnson, the running back, wasn't healthy going into that game. They did get that big splash play later in the game, down 7, and then it gets called back on a holding. So it's just like Washington could just never get it really going to where you felt like they were ever going to come out with a win in that game. But props to your Michigan Wolverines, props to Jim Harbaugh for turning that program around because, around the time where we were in high school, it was pretty messy in Michigan, and it was some years after that too. And it didn't change when it was Urban Meyer and they brought Harbaugh in, and Urban Meyer just owned Harbaugh too. But it's like since that, Michigan has just taken like a whole nother step. Scandals or no scandals, you have to respect what you see on the football field from that team this whole year. And Jim Harbaugh is a phenomenal coach. I hope he leaves the NFL, but enough of me. Go ahead.
No, I pretty much agree with everything you said. That game definitely could have been. I mean, it was closer than the final score depicted. Like you said, that they finally got that splash play down and it got called back. Yeah, no, it's good because not every fan gets to see their, favorite college team win the chip. And who knows? Maybe Michigan won't win it again in my lifetime. So the fact that I at least got to see it while I'm alive, is good. It was good. And like you said, it was just a great team. Like JJ really didn't have to be spectacular to win. They just bullied up front. And, if there was anybody who could get to that, to the secondary and really make it a game, it was Washington. And yeah, no, it's great. I hope Harbaugh does what's best for him. Right? I don't know if he's going to stay. I really have no feel for it right now with the whole scandal thing and all that. Like, I'm not too sure what his what kind of idea he has, whether he wants to stay or go, but we'd obviously love for him to stay. Otherwise, I don't know who they're going to have step up or who they're going to hire. So it's going to be interesting for sure, though, along with every other coaching vacancy coming up that we'll cover.
We'll see what is next for Michigan, where they might go if Harbaugh is gone. If he does stay, I just feel like he belongs in the NFL. To me, it's like you did what you set out to do. You restored Michigan. You won a national title. They're back on the map. You did your job. That's what you went there to do. He hasn't won a Super Bowl. He coached in a Super Bowl and he lost that Super Bowl. So I think there's some unfinished business, like some hunger inside him to get it done in the NFL. And my opinion, he's the best candidate out there. But speaking of legendary coaches, let's talk about the greatest college football coach of all time, Nick Saban, literally just retired. Like I said, it's Wednesday right now. Tyler and I were, coordinating this, getting ready to record. I look at my phone and I see it, breaking news, Nick Saban retired. So neither of us have, like the scoop on why he did it. What's next for him, perhaps? Like, is he done completely, or has he got his eyes on something else maybe? What are the rumors? We have no idea. Just kind of got dropped on our heads right as we're getting ready to record this. So, Tyler, thoughts on Nick Saban?
GOAT. Absolute college football GOAT coach. Yeah, how many did he have? 7?
8, I believe.
8? It's just crazy. That's crazy to think. Like, he turned Alabama into an absolute powerhouse. Like, I don't know if we're ever going to see another college coach like him for quite some time.
7, you're right. My bad.
And it's just out of nowhere, too. I don't know if I didn't expect it. I did not expect him to come out and retire, but do you think he's going to maybe make a move to the NFL, perhaps? Or do you think he's just done? Maybe.
I think he's already done that NFL route. Did his time as a coordinator back in the day, and then was the head coach of the Dolphins, and it just didn't work out. And there's some rough stories about those days when Nick Saban was running that team. Just not an NFL guy, I think. He's a phenomenal coach, and he can coach players no matter what the age. But I just think it's a control thing for him, where he's feels more comfortable, and he is at his best when he has most control, of everything that's going on his team. We might as well talk about Belichick while we're talking about the greatest college coach. We'll talk about the greatest NFL coach. Nothing, like I said, it's Wednesday right now. Nothing has happened with Belichick. What if these two are cooking something up together, though?
That'd be
Because I find it so hard to believe Nick Saban walking away from football right now. He just had, I know they didn't win the national title this year, but this may have been his best coaching job. And I don't know, like the last 10 years, strictly because that team wasn't, filled with stars. Like they weren't a super talented team at all. Like Jalen Milroe's not developed at all. And he got something out of Milroe late in the season and got this team in the college football playoff they had no business being in, beat Georgia for the SEC championship. There's no way he walks out with the year that he just had and coming up short. There, I just feel like there's more to come with Nick Saban. And I think it would be really cool if him and Bill are cooking something up and they get a reunion somewhere, do something together. That would be awesome to see. Might as well talk about Mike Vrabel right now because he's a hot commodity as a potential replacement for Belichick, understandably, for the Patriots coach. I couldn't believe it, Tyler. That was the most shocking to me. Like we talk about Nick Saban retiring, and I say like I'm shocked. I'm even more shocked that Mike Vrabel got fired by the Tennessee Titans, dude. When that broke to me, I was just like, wait a second. Off the top of my head, the scenario I think of is like a really hot girl. She's like a 9.5, right? And she gets caught up with, some dude, some chump, for whatever reason, starts dating this dude. But the guy's a bum, Mike Vrabel getting fired by the Titans is like that dude going to that chick and dumping her, in my opinion. That's exactly how I see it. Because I'm like, who the hell are you as an organization to think you're better than that dude? Like, what? That dude turned your whole organization around. Like, you were a mediocre organization with Jeff Fisher. Mediocre for how long? And then it was a mess after that. You were in shambles as a team. You had no identity. Vrabel comes in, and the culture is there immediately, and you could see the turnaround this team. Do you remember, like, the amount of injuries this team has dealt with like the last 5 years? And they've always, we'll take this year out of it. This year was a meltdown, and it's because everybody's at the later stages. And that time where Derrick Henry's not the same guy. Tannehill stinks. Their O-line was maybe the worst in the league. But anyways, he brought that culture to Tennessee, and they were a real like contender in the AFC for some time. Like, Brady's last pass as a New England Patriot threw a pick six at home against the Tennessee Titans in a playoff game. Mike Vrabel's Tennessee Titans went to New England in the playoffs and ended Tom Brady. That's what Mike Vrabel did. What else did Mike Vrabel do? He had like 30 guys on the IR. I want to say it was 2 years ago when the Titans got the 1 seed. Whenever the Tennessee Titans got the 1 seed, if you look at the injury report and like the guys on the IR across the league, they're like leading it. And oh, by the way, Ryan Tannehill's their quarterback. What? This team is the 1 seed? That's Mike Vrabel. And you fired him? I'll tell you what, if this thing in New England isn't happening, if I'm Ohio State, if I am the Ohio State Buckeyes, I am offering Mike Vrabel $1 billion to come coach Ohio State, because that would make my absolute day, Tyler. I've been talking about it for a while. I think Vrabel is, besides McVay, obviously, Vrabel is my favorite coach in the NFL. And this news was just completely shocking to me. But go ahead.
Yeah, no, another one that I didn't see coming. I don't know what the motive was behind it. I know that the Titans are going to be going through a bit of a, I don't want to call it a rebuild, but kind of. Henry's leaving.
Oh, they are.
They have young quarterbacks. Just got rid of their head coach. They trade away some vets at the deadline. Like, they're going to be going into somewhat of a rebuilding phase, and maybe they just want to do it under a new face. Like, whatever. I get it, but the chances of that coach being able to do a better job than Vrabel would have done is slim. It's very slim. And it's not like Vrabel's an old head who's been there 15, 20 years. He came in, like you mentioned, changed the culture around, and
he'll be coaching for the next 20 years at least.
Exactly. So
if Bill is gone, I like Vrabel there, and then I like Harbaugh to the Chargers. Bears announced today they're keeping Eberflus, so they're keeping Eberflus, but they fired their OC Gutsy. Thank God. They at least did that. It's going to be huge who they get for their next OC, because Fields has been running through these offensive coordinators since he's been in the league. So if it is, I'm not saying it's going to be Justin Fields, but whether it's Justin Fields or whether it's the first overall pick, Caleb Williams, coming to the Chicago Bears, like, you better make sure. You already said, hey, we're keeping this defensive coach as our head coach, right? So you better make sure that OC knows what the hell they're doing. And there's guys all over the place. Like, they keep plucking, like, the tree of Kyle Shanahan, Sean McVay. Like, teams just keep going, all right, we'll take this guy from the Niners, we'll take this guy from the Rams, we'll take this guy from the Niners, we'll take this guy from the Rams. I can't think of one that hasn't worked yet. Like, they've all worked. I was talking to Todd earlier. I think Zach Robinson, he's the Rams passing game coordinator. I think he's the next one out from Los Angeles. Going to be interesting what they do for offensive coordinator. And like I said, you better hit on that, whether it's Justin Fields, where, hey, we're going to need to get the best out of this guy, or it's a rookie quarterback. Because once again, your head coach he's a defensive guy. So I'm not for that. I'm for getting the best out of your quarterback. And I think getting the best out of your quarterback means giving him the best. I want that genius. I want that guy who's able to scheme it up and win the game Monday to Saturday. And he's got, the first 30 plays scripted out. And, hey, if this defense lines up like this, we know what we're doing with this. And it's an offensive league now. Like, I want the guy that's going to make my quarterback the best he can be. Eberflus is not going to do that for whoever their quarterback is. But they will still have a really good defense because he's a great defensive mind. But got to find the OC for them. Maybe it's Arthur Smith. It's the next guy I want to talk about. Gets fired from Atlanta. We talked about it last episode. It's like, dude, you wanted to stick this thing out with Desmond Ridder as long as you did. And I literally said it, clipped it. Is it going to cost you your job because you wanted to trial this kid and just keep throwing him out there when you have a capable backup in Taylor Heineke? We've seen it. Heineke can make plays. He can win games. We know you have that guy. We know you have a great roster. You got great weapons on the offensive end. And you wanted to keep trotting Desmond Ridder out there as he continues to throw the game late. You make your bed, you got to lay in it. So I really don't have any sympathy for Arthur Smith. I think he is a good offensive coach, but he just got hung up on this kid that they drafted, and I think he was third-round pick, maybe second. I think it was third, though, out of Cincinnati. And I've said it in the past, I don't even think the dude looked good at Cincinnati. So he had way too long of a leash in Atlanta, and it ends up costing Arthur Smith his job. Anything you want to add on that?
No, I mean we talked about it all year. The Heineke versus Ritter battle, and maybe if it weren't for injuries, it'd be a different story. But I don't know how you stick with the Ritter that long. I really don't. It's tough to watch him sometimes. So I don't know how. Like you're telling me that the kid is flawless, and I don't want to say flawless, but you're telling me he performed that well in practice and in walkthroughs and all that, like film room, everything that we can't see, that we don't know about. Maybe Ritter excelled behind the scenes, and that's why Smith stuck with him. But it's really hard to picture that. His lasting memory in Atlanta is going to be that Jamal Williams touchdown and his his midfield conversation with Dennis Allen. So he's a good offensive mind, like you mentioned. So I hope he goes somewhere and has some success. Just he kind of dug himself a hole with Ritter, so that's unfortunate.
But let's move on. Another move that was made today, Pete Carroll. I don't know if I want to word this that he got fired. I think it was kind of, hey, Pete, we want to go in a different direction, but we still want you here in the building, so we're going to move you upstairs kind of thing. I think it was kind of a mutual thing, but at the same time, it's hard to believe that Pete Carroll doesn't want to coach anymore. Because that's one of those guys where it's coaching's in his blood. So I'm curious to see if he's actually going to like hold up and take this job upstairs, or if he's going to listen in to, some potential offers elsewhere in the NFL. We'll see what happens with that. Anything you want to talk about, Pete Carroll?
Yeah, I think he's just got weak knees. The dude's 75, walking up and down the sidelines, running to call timeouts and shit. His legs are weak. The dude needs a box seat, for heaven's sake. So, he had a great career. He had a great head coaching career at USC in Seattle. I bet you he does still want to coach, part of them at least. So it was an interesting bit of news, though. I just saw that today as well. So I don't know. I haven't really digested that yet.
It's kind of similar to Vrabel too. He brought in a new culture for Seattle. Players loved him. I mean, at this point, I think it's kind of gotten old. The whole Pete Carroll thing. It's just gotten to that. Sometimes it doesn't have to be like the guy's a bad coach or he did something wrong, but just things just run their course. And I think that's what's happening in Seattle. But going back to when he first got there, he brought in like a whole new swagger to Seattle, and that defense was like a Legion of Boom. That shit was legit. They won a Super Bowl, should have won 2 Super Bowls. They went on a great little run. I fucking hated them in that era with Richard Sherman and all them. Couldn't stand Seahawks. We had some great battles with them back in those days. Lately, it hasn't really been a battle since McVay's taken over, but I think that his players kind of take advantage of the leeway he gives them, and then they do some things on the field that are classless. Talk about the DK Metcalf temper tantrums. Like, that doesn't happen on a lot of teams. But shit like that, it's happened for years and years on the Seattle Seahawks, and there were some dirty plays that I've seen from that team over the years, and it's just one of those things where I've had some things to say about Pete Carroll in the past, but as a whole, respect him. He is a legend. Like you mentioned, the USC days, unbelievable what he did for USC. They were fun as hell to watch when we were kids, so that's it for that. I want to talk a little bit about the Jacksonville Jaguars. This team was 8-3 at one point in the season. If you would have bet on the Jags to win the division beginning of the season, you wouldn't have been making much, because, I mean, they were heavy favorites in that division. For them to not make the playoffs going into this year, this was the year where Trevor Lawrence was supposed to make that leap into being top 5, and your name was being talked about in potential AFC representative going to the Super Bowl. and you don't make the playoffs in a division with rebuilding Tennessee and 2 rookie head coach tandems. You didn't win that division.
It's just crazy. 8-3. And it's not like they had a hard schedule either. Down the stretch, they had some very winnable, easy games that they just blew. But yeah, dude, I don't know. I don't really know where they go from here, right? Like, do you just say, all right, fluke second half of the season, let's see, where we went wrong. We had some injuries stack up. Kirk, Lawrence was obviously banged up, different parts of that end stretch. Like Josh Allen, they got a big decision to make on him and some of the other guys. But it's like, where do they go? Do they just say, like, we believe we have the right pieces? A wide receiver, they got to make some sort of move, right? I was talking to Weed about it. I think maybe T. Higgins is a play for them out there in Jacksonville if they don't re-sign Ridley. Because I don't know, or you draft, because I don't think teams really like to have too much money invested in the wide receiver core, right? Like you pay one receiver, you pay your number one guy, and then you try to get bargains on 2, 3, and 4 with a rookie kind of mixed in there, right? Or at least a young guy and a vet. They have Kirk. They're paying him pretty well. Zay Jones, I think Zay Jones is gone too. Calvin Ridley's not under contract. They don't really have any good young receivers in that core, so they have some work to do with their wide receiver core. But yeah, it's funny. They went from heavy favorites this year, and now from a I don't say it, like a telescope, like a far look outside into next season, they're not going to be the favorites next year. Right now, they're kind of looking like that. They might be the third team in that division with Anthony Richardson coming back. Everyone's going to be high on the Colts. Obviously, the Texans with CJ are who they are. So I don't know. Yeah, it's going to be interesting what they do moving forward. I don't think that they move on from Dougie. I like Dougie. I respect Dougie. I think
he's there. They did fire. What I wanted to mention is they fired 10 assistant coaches, including their DC, but they kept 10. But they kept their offensive coordinator, Press Taylor, who, speaking of weed, he is fed up with Press Taylor, wants him gone. I keep going back to when they were on the goal line and they couldn't punch it in from the 1. 2 very questionable play calls. Trevor Lawrence is so banged up, and you have him run a QB sneak, and he gets his legs taken away from him, so he has to dive forward with the ball. It doesn't get there, but you're exposing your quarterback out to that when he's already banged up. Like, that could have been it for him. Then it could have been end of the game, with a hit he could have taken there. And then at the end of the game, they need 2 yards just to advance down the field. They have to score. They have to do something or the game's over. And they run 2 plays to the left where they try to get it to Ridley, and he just throws. The first play was to Ridley. He ends up throwing it over his head by like 5 yards near the sideline. And the second play, he overthrew Evan Ingram, if I'm not mistaken, where it just really wasn't close. And to me, those aren't high percentage like completions. Like, you weren't setting your quarterback up for an easy completion there. You failed to run the ball. A few weeks back against the Carolina Panthers, they ran all over them. But besides that, dude, I haven't seen the Jacksonville Jaguars like take advantage of this run game all season. Like, it's just they're putting it all on Trevor. And like I said, the dude is so banged up. Credit to him for even sticking it out down the stretch. There's a lot we could talk about with Trevor Lawrence, but I don't want to dive into that right now. Just as a whole, very disappointing ending for the Jags with what the expectations were going into the season, and then you get to 8-3, and you fall off a cliff and you miss the playoffs. Speaking about the playoffs, Tyler, let's dive into these matchups for Super Wildcard Weekend. Let's start it out, though, with the first game. It's going to be Saturday afternoon. Cleveland Browns at the Houston Texans. We got Joe Flacco back in the postseason on the road facing rookie sensation CJ Stroud. I'm early thoughts about this game. I don't know, dude. I could see it going either way. I really could. I think the Browns are a better football team, though. And I think that there's something to be said about like the highs of last week, like the Texans beating the Colts, winning the division after the dumpster fire your organization's been in the last few years. You have a rookie head coach, rookie quarterback, and you go out and you get it done, win the division, shock the world. Like, you're up here right now. And I just think this is a spot where I know it's everybody has to get up for a playoff game. It's the playoffs. But I still think like there's an emotional feel to like the Texans feel like, dude, we're good. Like, we just did what nobody thought. We're here. I think there could be some points scored in this game. So I might look into taking the over. But because Cleveland's defense, as good as it has been, doesn't play well on the road. And I expect CJ to get his. But I think the Browns right now, Amari Cooper's going to be back. He's going to be good to go. Last time these teams played, I know CJ wasn't out there, but the Browns just lit him up, dude. And I don't think that's going to change. I think the Browns can get whatever they want in this game. What do you have to say about this one?
Pretty much going to echo you there. Browns defense, good as they have been, don't play well on the road. They actually played bad on the road. But Joe Flacco, vet, already has a chip. He kind of brought some life back to Cleveland. And, they're going to be on the road in Houston. There's something to be said about rookie quarterbacks in the playoffs. I know that CJ's kind of, one of those few, I don't want to say exceptions, but one of those few exceptions. He's doing a lot of things that nobody thought that he'd be able to do. So my first instinct was, I thought about how the Browns defense played on the road and how well CJ plays at home, and I was like, man, they're gonna be high. I might want to ride with Houston, and then I'm like, God, but he's a rookie. He's a fucking rookie. In the playoffs, it's gonna be a whole nother level. The playoffs always are. It's another level. So I feel like if I'm gonna put money on somebody, I will put it on the Browns, but again, I'm really split. Like, this is as close to 50-50 as I am on any other game. I think that's going to be a great game. I think that there's a couple real good games on the slate, but I think that's a great game to have right off the bat. I think that's the first game, right? Saturday, 1 o'clock.
Yeah, 4. Yeah,
4 o'clock.
Yeah.
Saturday at 4. Okay, gives us time to get some little pregame drinky poos in, if you know what I mean.
And by the time it's 8 o'clock, you're gonna be feeling good, and it's gonna be Dolphins Chiefs. You got Miami at Kansas City. Miami has a total collapse at the end of their season and give up the division to the Buffalo Bills. Unreal.
Really unreal.
I went back and I found a text. I texted Tyler probably 5, maybe 6 weeks ago. Probably 5 weeks ago, because the Bills have won 5 straight now. And it was the end of the Bills game, and Tony Romo was just doing what he does, sucking off the Bills. But at the end of it, he said something. He's like, Jim, Buffalo might have a home playoff game. They might do it. They might have a home playoff game. And I was just sitting there and I was like, what are you talking? And then Nance checked him and he's like, well, Miami would really, I think he said like Miami would really have to, fall off for that to happen. And I texted you, I was like, dude, Romo is just too much sometimes. But dude, he was fucking right. Like he was right. I'll never forget a few years back when the Bucks played the Chiefs in the regular season. And he said at the end of that game, he said, Jim, I can see these two teams. I think this is going to be this year's Super Bowl. What happens? Bucks Chiefs Super Bowl. Like, I don't know if Romo's like some kind of witch or whatever, but long story short, Miami has to go on the road. First round, they're playing at Arrowhead. It's going to be freezing, dude. I heard some reports today. It's going to be cold as hell. Not Miami Dolphins friendly at all. The Chiefs' offense has been what it has been. We're going to talk a lot about the Chiefs second half of this episode with Tyler when he comes on. So we could talk about this game more when we get into it with him. But I just want to throw out, because of the circumstances, Miami against great teams this year, I will say it, against great teams, they don't put up points. They don't score 20 points. And then the Chiefs offense, stalling out like it has been. And then you factor in the weather, dude. I love the under in this game. Right now we're sitting at last night I took it at 44.5. Right now I'm seeing 44, but I love the under in this game.
Yeah, it's a good call. Especially that game that they played earlier this year when the Chiefs were
I think in Germany.
Yeah, both teams were 6-2 at the time, I believe. And the Chiefs started out up 21-0, and I forget what the final score was, but I know Miami came back.
21-14.
Yeah, and then Tua had that throw where Cedric Wilson was wide open for the touchdown, and the ball kind of slipped out of his hand on the throw. We talked about that earlier this year. It's just like that's probably what we're going to see again. We're probably going to see a real tight game. We'll see one of these two teams get off to an early lead and then go stagnant, and then the other team's going to fucking scrap and battle and crawl their way back into it. It's not going to be a pretty one. Dolphins, like you mentioned, when they do play good teams, they struggle offensively, and especially in this game where I think it's going to be right around 0 degrees, like literally like 0 degree weather, single digits maybe. It's going to be cold as fuck, and those boys have no idea what that's like. And then Kansas City, with just all the struggles they had, bro, it's like, never doubt Mahomes, but damn, it is hard to buy into the Chiefs right now. It's hard to put money on them and back them the way that they've been playing, same as like fucking Philly. No matter who Philly was going to play going into these playoffs, the way that they've been playing, I don't know how you can back them. But obviously we'll get to that game. But yeah, I think that for this one, that's a good call though. The under feels like the right play.
Yeah, it should be interesting. Tyreek going back to Kansas City. Moving on, those Buffalo Bills that we just mentioned, hosting the Pittsburgh Steelers Sunday at 1:00. It's hard to believe that the Dolphins losing the AFC East, that's hard to believe. But this Pittsburgh Steelers team, even being in the playoffs, might even be more unbelievable than that because of how just unorganized and poor this team looked just like 3 weeks ago. And then Mason Rudolph comes in and it just seems like, okay, well, they're just going to, the next guy because Kenny's hurt, Trubisky stinks. So, I mean, it's like, fuck it. What do we have to lose at this point? And they rattle off 3 in a row. And I know the Ravens weren't even playing their guys, so they got really fortunate with that. But at the same time, we're looking at the end of the season, and the record is what it is. And Mike Tomlin just somehow did it again, and you're like, how the fuck did that happen? When just weeks ago they were talking about this guy potentially being fired. Now this team with Mason Rudolph is playing at Buffalo. Thoughts on this game? The Bills have been an absolute wagon these last 5 weeks, but they continue to play at the level of their competition. They've done it for years, and this year it's been no different. They almost lost to the Chargers, for God's sake, in the heat of a playoff race. They almost lost to Easton Stick. So, I mean, they have the ability to just throw it all away on Sunday. They do. But it's going to be a lot harder for Pittsburgh without TJ Watt out there. I think that if the weather is shitty in Buffalo, like that is the best for the Steelers, because the Bills don't even have a home field advantage when the weather's like that. We saw it against the Bengals, because they're not that ground and pound, like play tough defense, just, milk the clock. Like that's not the Buffalo Bills. Yeah, they're going to be able to run the ball with Cook, but you always have that threat of turning the ball over with Josh Allen. So if the conditions are bad on Sunday in Buffalo, to me, that just increases those odds of him turning the ball over. And that's the only way you lose this game. Only way. Talked about it that game earlier in the season against the Broncos. I believe it was Monday night when they were playing at home. And Denver wasn't doing anything all game. But the Bills just kept turning it over. And eventually, like, you give the opposing team that many chances, they're going to score and they're going to beat you. And that's what happened. So the Bills certainly are capable of giving this game away. So it's going to be interesting with the weather. I think I'm seeing 10 points. This game, I don't want any part of, Tyler, because I could see it being ugly. Because, the Bills made it ugly against the Cowboys. So who's to say they're not going to make it ugly against Mason Rudolph and the Steelers? But then I think about, well, we've seen them, almost lose to the Giants at home. We've seen them almost lose to the Chargers in Easton Stick when it was a must-win game. I could see it going, like, I could see it being closer than 10, and I could see the Bills wiping the floor with them. But what do you got?
Like, if TJ Watt was playing in this game, then I think I would actually feel decent betting on the Steelers. Like, I would give the Steelers, like, what's the phrase? A puncher's chance? I don't know the
fighter's
phrase.
Chance.
A fighter's chance. Yeah, a fighter's chance. Like, I would give them a fighter's chance. Like, the Bills play to their competition. The Steelers are a good, well-rounded football team who has seemed to find their groove on offense. But I think everyone can agree, like, they're just a quarterback away, right? Like, we said it about a couple teams, like the Saints before this season. The Saints, they were a quarterback away, and then Derek Carr. Atlanta now, right? A quarterback away. The Steelers really, truly are a team that is just a quarterback away. The Broncos, before they got Russell Wilson, like, the Steelers are one of those teams. They're well-rounded. They play tough. They got Mike Tomlin. The boys are running the football well. Like, Najee Harris, best stretch of his career. And then Jaylen Warren is playing like a dog. And then you got the receivers. You got Pickens. You have Deontay Johnson. You have Freiermuth. Like, they have the pieces, a decent O-line. So I think, if the weather in Buffalo isn't great, which it never is this time of year, like, this could be a scrappy game. And let's be honest, who do you think is going to have, if you had to bet on it, more turnovers, the Steelers or the Bills? Probably the Bills, right? And if it comes down to it and it's a turnover battle, the Bills lose the turnover battle, they might lose the game. So they're getting what? The Bills are laying 10 points on the books. I probably will jump all over it, to be honest with you. The only thing that, like I said, TJ Watt being out, like, that's a big
They get
hit.
Minka back, though.
It's a big hit, but they're getting Minka back. Like, I think this game is going to be closer than than what the books are, you know, representing. We'll put it that way.
I may be with you on leaning Pittsburgh here, because another thing is James Cook has struggled to hang on to the ball like in dome games. So
Yeah.
if it's going to be cold as shit and snowing, I don't feel good about James Cook being able to handle the rock. I know they're getting Fournette involved lately more, and they're probably doing that, by design where, hey, once we get to the playoffs, we're going to really let this dude loose, as he's done in his career. He's gone off in the playoffs. But can't get away from James Cook because of that. But there is the threat where, he puts the ball on the ground in your territory, you set the Steelers up, and could be looking at, like you said, a scrappy game in Buffalo. But let's move on to the 4:30 game Sunday. Your Dallas Cowboys hosting the Green Bay Packers, who get in after beating the Bears last week. Jordan Love looked incredible. He has looked incredible going down the stretch. It's been fun to see him take this leap. And there's been a lot of things said about this kid this year. Going back to our early episodes, we talked about, we were like, I don't know about this guy. But second half of the season, he's really turned it on. And they're fun. They're a fun offense to watch right now, honestly. Like, it's not boring. It's not boring football like it was earlier this season, where they would just stall for like a whole half at a time. It's not like that anymore. Like, there's a real threat. Like, Jordan Love poses a real threat. They got some very capable young weapons who are fast. I'm not sure what's going on with Stephon Gilmore. I'll let you talk about that. But, I mean, Dallas has done what they had to do. They end up winning the division, dethroning Philly, and now they're that 2 seed where, hey, if the Niners trip up next week against whoever they play, the road to the Super Bowl runs through Dallas, and you don't lose at home. So that's huge for them to get that 2 seed. I know we talked about it with Truesdale a few episodes back, and we talked about, like, hey, man, if they can get that 2 seed, or that with that time we were talking about, maybe if they get that 1 seed, it's going to be tough to win in Dallas for opposing teams. I'm seeing 7.5 right now, over under 50.5. There's going to be a lot of points scored in this game, I think, especially if Gilmore is shaken up and with how that Packers offense has been moving. But I like the Cowboys in this game. I don't see the Cowboys tripping up in this game. So for like all of like the Cowboys haters out there who are like waiting for that moment where they collapse in the playoffs, I don't see it being that. I don't see it being this week. I really don't. I think Green Bay, like Houston, it's a good story that they got here. Jordan Love's behind center, and hey, you got your guy. And the defense wasn't great this year, and you still got here into the playoffs. Christian Watson's been banged up. Aaron Jones has been banged up. Still got to the playoffs. That's a big accomplishment for Green Bay. So it kind of playing with house money at this point, you know what I mean? Like the Rams are, who we're about to get into. I just think it's like a feel good. You're here. Hey, let's go do. We're young. We don't know any better. Like, I could see them putting up some points in this game. I just don't see Dallas losing at home. I really don't.
No, yeah, I don't. I'm not really too worried about this game. I think if Green Bay's defense was better, then I think that they might be the play for the spread at 7.5. I mean, that half point is huge. So, but I know it's been sitting there though. I think that line has been sitting at 7.5 all week, and the fact that it hasn't moved is not a great sign. But yeah, I'm not too worried about this one. I would love. It's going to feel good. I mean, I really, really do think that Dallas is going to win this game, and it would feel really nice to see them beat the Packers in the playoffs since Rodgers burned us quite a few times. Yeah, I mean, Jordan Love, good story second half of the year, just getting to the playoffs. But, yeah, I think the road for them ends in Dallas, and Dallas has been a powerhouse at home, and I don't think that changes this week.
Final game of Sunday. My Los Angeles Rams at the Detroit Lions. Sunday, 8 o'clock. This is a movie. This is literally a movie script to me. Like, you got Matthew Stafford, who, I mean, coming out of Georgia, drafted first overall by Detroit Lions, rides it out in Detroit for as long as he did, played as good quarterback as, I mean, he was their franchise. He was the face of their franchise for so long, battled so much adversity, took so many hits, so many injuries he dealt with, and he just kept going out there and competing for that team, for that city. They trade him away to the Rams. Rams go all in on him, win a Super Bowl with him. And then because of that trade, Lions had these picks, and then Jared Goff has looked good. Dan Campbell's done a great job. Lions are climbing. Rams won their Super Bowl, and it's like, all right, the Rams, they peaked out. Jalen Ramsey's gone. I looked at it. I have a shirt. That has the entire roster of our Super Bowl team from 2 years ago, right? There's 53 men on an NFL roster. I counted, Tyler. We have 11 players from that team that are on this current team. 11 players.
That's the definition of turnover.
I've talked about it time and time again this season. Like, I would have never imagined this team being in this spot right here, like super wild card weekend. And I'm talking about the Rams. Like, I would have never thought that in the offseason or, early in the season. We were sitting at 3-6 at one point. So I watched them get absolute doors blown off when we went to the Rams-Cowboys game in Dallas. And at that point, I was like, oh, the season's over. Like, Stafford was hurt at that point. To me, it was like, okay, it's fun. And it's like, I still had like a content feeling because we got our Super Bowl a couple of years ago. And that's just I'm going to be good with that for a while. And I'm fine with like having to rebuild. Whatever happens. So for us to be, this is the definition of playing with house money, for them to be in this game. But I want to go back to the movie script part. Stafford wins the Super Bowl. The Lions are getting really good. And he takes the Rams back to the playoffs. He didn't even know the names of most of the dudes on this team when they were at practices in the offseason. Like, he was just meeting them for the first time. Takes this Rams team to the playoffs, and now he's playing at Detroit, where it all started for him. And Detroit hasn't had a home playoff game in 30 years. 30 years they haven't had a home playoff game. So those fans are that hyped. They win the division. They get a home playoff game. They're going to be selling out regardless. And it's like, now it's kind of like a Debbie Downer to that. Like, oh, well, you have to play against Matthew Stafford, who's going to come in here and try to just tear you alive. That's got to be so tough for Lions fans, dude. And I saw that they put out a ban. Anybody who's wearing a Lions Matt Stafford jersey will not be let in the stadium on Sunday. I just think that's fucking whack. That they're not even going to allow these fans. They're not even going to allow these fans to go, like, show their love for this dude. Like, it's not a Rams Stafford jersey. It's a Lions. Like, you're still rooting for the Lions, bro. So that was super corny and disrespectful, honestly, for, like I said, blood, sweat, and tears that Matthew Stafford laid out for those people, for that fan base and for that team for as long as he did. That's just kind of a slap in the face. And I think you're just motivating him even more. And I don't want to just give the credit to Stafford. What Sean McVay's done this year, there's going to be a rookie head coach, most likely, who wins Coach of the Year. But this is by far the best coaching job. Sean, like, when we won a Super Bowl, we had a really good team. And we were like on the doorstep. We went to a Super Bowl and we lost. And we were on the doorstep for years. You just knew it was going to come. Like, then I felt the pressure. That whole playoff run, I felt like immense pressure. I was stressed out, dude, watching those games. Because it's like, been here before. We already lost. We got this squad. Now we got Matthew Stafford. We went all in on Matthew Stafford because Goff wasn't it. Like, we have to win this shit. Like, that was immense pressure. Now, there's no pressure in the world because, like, what Sean McVay has done to this young team, it's like a mixture of young team, and then you have Cooper Kupp, Aaron Donald, Matt Stafford. Like, we've seen what Puka Nacua has done, sets rookie records for most yards, most receptions in a season. Dude's a 5th-round pick. Like, you want to talk about structure and, like, culture and just top to bottom, having it as an organization. You pull that off in the 5th round. Are you kidding me? Kobe Turner, 3rd-round pick out of Wake Forest. Dude wasn't even on the radar. Didn't even have odds laid out. Weren't even available to pick him. Defensive Rookie of the Year. Jalen Carter was the favorite by far all season long. He plays the same position as Jalen Carter, and go look at the numbers right now because he's outperformed him in every aspect of playing D tackle. The only thing that Jalen Carter has is he has a scoop and a score for a touchdown on him. That's all he has that's different. Kobe Turner's been an absolute monster. Back to the game, Tyler. I love the Los Angeles Rams, and this is my heart betting, but I feel like it's also my head going in the right direction. I'm going to take them to cover the 3.5, and I'm also going to sprinkle some money line because I think that secondary, while they did get Gardner Johnson back, I think they can expose the hell out of that Detroit defense. As long as you protect up front, like, which the O-line has done a magnificent job second half of the season protecting Stafford. And by the way, Kyron Williams, haven't even brought him up. Like, Kyron Williams is easily a top 10 running back in the league right now. Get him going in the run game. I don't see a scenario where Detroit's defense does anything to stop the Rams on Sunday. And I can see the Lions lighting our defense up some too as well. Sure, yeah. So the over might be a play here, but I really like the Rams in this game. And another thing to think about is no coach in the world knows tendencies of Jared Goff more than Sean McVay. Nobody knows strengths. Nobody knows weaknesses more than Sean McVay. By the way, a brilliant dude. Like, he's a fucking genius. He has everything on Jared Goff. Literally everything. In my opinion, just go back and watch the tape from that Super Bowl against the Patriots where McVay can go back and, like, all right, how did I call this game? What did Belichick do to stop this offense? There's so much that McVay has on Goff where it's like, yeah, Detroit's really good. Laporte is down. Sucks for them. Detroit's good, and they could score. But I think this is a spot where we get pressure on Jared Goff. Like, if Aaron Donald gets going in this game, I like the Rams straight up. But go ahead. I've been rambling.
Nah, hey, better you than me in this one, you know. But yeah, I agree. I think that a lot of people will look at the records, you know, and they'll think that, you know, the Rams are kind of big underdogs in this one, but this is a lot closer of a matchup than I think people are, you know, giving the Rams credit for. I can easily see the Rams, you know, winning this one. That Detroit defense has just been soft, and a lot of times when you're going into the playoffs, it's like, who's the hotter team? I don't care if, you know, you had your 13-4 as the 1 seed and you get a 9-8 wild card team coming in. If they get into the playoffs and then they win in the wild card round and now they're playing the 1 seed, they have all the momentum in the world. And they feel like they're playing on house money, and that 1 seed or that higher seed's feeling the pressure. It's not a good mixture for that high seed, right? You know, the Rams have the better quarterback. I think the run games are, you know, both teams have good run games. Both teams have good receivers. Defense, though, right? So then you say, all right, who can protect the quarterback better? I think that the the line, like you mentioned, the Rams O-line has done a lot better of a job the second half of the season. Defensively, I'm taking that Rams unit over Detroit's, hands down. I know that the Rams have a lot of what you would consider no names because nobody knows more than, probably out of those 11 guys on the defensive side of the ball. Let's say 10. Everyone knows Aaron Donald. Out of those other 10 guys, I bet you most football fans, people who watch football every week, could probably only name a couple guys on that defense.
You better be able to name Ernest Jones.
Yes, you know what I mean? So it's like there's a lot of guys nobody knows on that defense, but they just play well and they play for each other. That's the biggest thing. I think going into this game is going to be which defense is going to step up, because we know both offenses can get it done. There's this high, firepower on both for both teams on the offensive side of the ball. So which defense can step up, get it done? I'm going to put my money on the Rams. I don't even think I'm going to give a shit about the spread. I think I'm just going to go Rams money line on this one, to be honest with you. If you want to take a safe parlay, sure, throw the Rams in there, tease them a little bit, put them to 6.5, maybe 7.5. But I feel comfortable betting them money line here. I know the Lions, if they win, they'd get that rematch with Dallas, which I feel like a lot of Detroit fans would really, really want. And I would welcome it. I would love to, have Detroit come to Dallas, run it back, show them who the better team is. But also right now, I feel like I would rather play Detroit than LA. I think other than the Niners, the scariest team to me is that LA team, just because of Stafford and the boys.
I will say our secondary has been very vulnerable to just these breakdowns in coverage where teams are getting wide open for these huge touchdowns. So I wouldn't be surprised, if Jameson Williams or St. Brown gets loose for 1 or 2. But either way, like I said, I don't see that Detroit defense stopping the Rams. I really don't. Last game of Wild Card Weekend, we're talking about, we're going into Monday night. Right down the road from me, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are hosting the Philadelphia Eagles, who choked away the NFC East, just like the Dolphins choked away the AFC East. So now they're playing on the road. They get smoked by the Giants last week, lose at home to the Arizona Cardinals the week before, gave that game away, which ended their hopes of winning the division, essentially, with the Cowboys having a game at Washington. I know you're pumped to see the demise of the Philadelphia Eagles right now.
I love it.
Ton of drama coming out of there. And now we're talking about A.J. Brown injury. It's not looking good for them. They don't look good at all. Offense has been playing with no rhythm for weeks now. Seems like since that Bills game, there's just been nothing there for that Eagles offense. And they're not fooling any defense. It just seems like they're just running plays out there. And then we talk about their defense. Their defense is trash. It's like Shaq Leonard hasn't looked good since they signed him. He doesn't look like the same dude. So you're starting to realize why Franklin took his job in Indy. And then the secondary is, we talk about the Lions secondary and the Rams secondary not being great. The Eagles secondary might be the worst in the NFL. And this is a playoff team. So it's like it's a glaring weakness on this team right now. I was thinking about this earlier. I already did put a bet in on this game. I put a bet in on the Bucs to cover, and I sprinkled money line, just as like I did with the Rams, because while the Bucs haven't looked great down the stretch, I just feel like, as crazy as it is to say, I feel like there's more potential with the Bucs offense than there is with the Eagles offense right now. And it's crazy to say that,
Yeah.
like thinking that those would have been words coming out of my mouth like 5-6 weeks ago. But I think that's legit. Like, I'm probably going to put a bet in on Baker Mayfield over 1.5 touchdowns too. I could easily see him throwing 2 touchdown passes in this game, maybe even in the first quarter, honestly. Want to throw it anytime on Mike Evans. That's never a bad idea either. White has been running the ball a lot better for them. So they have a multi-dimensional offense, and Baker, while he hasn't looked great down the stretch, has improved a lot this season. And yeah, Eagles offense doesn't look great. They fail to establish the run game. They just continue to get Jalen Hurts beat up. Instead, there's just nothing going on. And then you combine that with A.J. Brown injury and how bad their defense is. I'm leaning Bucks heavy and sprinkling money line.
Yeah, I mean, especially, do we know what's going on? What hurts his middle finger? That thing definitely got fucked up.
It was
that
gross.
Got fucked up. Yeah, it just doesn't feel like this is Philly's year. It doesn't feel like this is a good spot for them either. Like this game specifically, they need their defense to step up. I don't care how healthy A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith are, and how good Jalen Hurts' middle finger is. Like, that defense has been horrific. They have been abysmal. And I talked about it going into the year, and it was so crazy, which, by the way, Eagles, I think, first team since like 1980 something to start the season 10-1 and then not win their division. It was like I think the Jets. It was like the Jets were the only other team to do that back in the 80s. So it's been almost 40 years since something like that has happened. They could very easily lose this game. And going into the season, I was like, dude, they lose both their coordinators and a lot of turnover on the defensive side of the ball. I was like, I don't know, man. I don't see that Eagles defense being the same. I know they drafted Jalen Carter. They got Nolan Smith. They think Nakobe Dean's going to step up and be that linebacker that, they lost in Edwards. Like, I'm sitting there and I'm listening to it. I'm like, yeah, I could see it, but at the same time, I wasn't like buying it. And then they start out the year undefeated. What did they go, like 8-0? It was 8 or 9-0. Yeah. And then I'm like, holy shit, how the fuck do they do this? Like, how do they consider, like, how are they doing it? And then slowly but surely, second half of the year, like you mentioned, after that Bills game, it just fell apart. Their defense fell apart. Their secondary specifically more so fell apart, which is not, when you look at them on paper, not bad, right? Bradbury and Slay, top two, like, they played great last year. Both of them were probably, borderline. If they didn't make the Pro Bowl, they were probably close to making the Pro Bowl last year. But this year, they haven't played well. They just haven't. I know Garner Johnson was a big loss for them. They brought in Terrell Edmonds, who I thought was a decent player, but he lost his job when they traded for Byard. And then since Byard's been there, who I think we can all agree was a good player pretty much his whole career, he's been somewhat like not there, like kind of like a ghost. Like, he's just there. Like, he hasn't made any splash plays for them yet. Not that that's what it takes to, be a difference maker, but kind of, right? Like, you want to make some splash plays. Darius Leonard, he hasn't really made any splash plays either. So who does make splash plays though? Mike fucking Evans. That's who makes some splash plays. The Eagles got to get, like, they don't give their run game a chance. They start, and then you're like, oh, okay, chunk run, chunk run, chunk run, chunk run, pass, 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 pass. Jalen Hurts run, pass, pass. Here you go, Swift. Take one in the second quarter. Okay, we'll give you another 2 carries in the third, and then maybe 1 or 2 in the fourth. It's like, bro, stick to the run. Stop being so predictable, and you might have a chance to win. I don't want to sound like I'm complaining, because I do really enjoy watching the Eagles flail like this. I feel bad for the boys, though. We have a lot of boys who are Eagles fans, and I know this isn't an easy stretch by any means to watch, but holy shit. Their OC has got to figure it the fuck out. You can't keep running all these plays with Hurts, and now he's got that middle finger all fucked up. Like, who knows if he's even going to really be able to grip the ball with, as well as he obviously can when he's healthy. So I don't know. I think the Eagles are in for a treat. I think Tampa's got a good shot. They have a good shot, especially at home. Are you going?
I'm thinking about it.
You should look up tickets, see how much those are.
I did. They're not bad at all.
Really?
Yeah, I'm thinking about it.
Might convince CJ to fly down.
Yeah, that'd be a blast. I did want to say you absolutely nailed it. Yeah, you absolutely nailed it. Talking about like the Eagles play calling, like the rhythm is just so off with that team where they'll get something going in the run game with Swift. And I had Swift on my fantasy team, so I've known about this all season where it's like he looks so good when you put the ball in his hands. Then it's like, all right, that was fun. Now we're going to pass. All right, Jalen Hurts, let's take the shotgun. Let's take the snap, the shotgun, and let's run right or let's run left, and get even more hurt. And then let's air it out and just completely forget about DeAndre Swift. And then Rashad Penny, who you brought in the offseason, wasn't even a factor on your team all season. And Gainwell looks good when he gets the ball too. I feel like there's so much. They leave like so much meat on the bone when they're playing offense because they don't get the best out of like what they are. Like they're trying to be something that they're not. Like they're trying. I don't know what they think like they can do with this group, but it's not just like airing the ball out 40 times and then putting Jalen Hurts in harm's way like time and time. Like he's not a big dude. He's not Josh Allen. Like he's not this big dude who could just go out there and fight for extra yards and run people over. Like you're legitimately threatening your chance to win every time you run one of those dumbass QB runs. And it doesn't have to be like that. Like you have this dominant O-line, run the football. But it's going to be hard for like teams to just look in the mirror and change, what they've been doing all season long, especially in a week's time. Like I don't expect the Eagles to come out and light it up because we just haven't seen that. We haven't seen that from them. We've been waiting for it to change and it just hasn't. I did want to mention Darius Slay. He's been banged up all season, so I'm going to give him a pass for how he's looked out there. I just think he's been battling all year. Bradbury started off the year with some injuries, but it's like since Bradbury's been out there and he's had to be that number one, he's just not that guy. He's not that guy. I realized maybe at one point in his career with the Giants he was, but he's not it. Like he's not a number one corner. So they're just getting exposed. And then you got these rookies or 2-year corners opposite side of him. It's like Eli Ricks looks like garbage too. I don't want to bash the kid because he's really young. And it's like Joby from Alabama, another young corner. So it's like there's going to be mistakes, but having to throw those guys out there hasn't been good. Blankenship taking over as everyday safety for them. Dude's not good. I just feel like he's either taking the wrong angle of pursuit on like every time a receiver or back, gets deep on that defense. He's either taking a bad angle or he's just too slow. And it's that simple. Like he can't get to him. I don't think he's great in pass defense either. So they got some work to do this offseason. I think they know like deep down this team they're not going to magically turn on a switch. They're just not. And now you throw in the Hurts injuries and wide receiver injuries. Even if they do get past the Bucs this week, I don't give them any chance with whoever they play next week. I really don't. But that is it for our Super Wildcard Weekend preview. Coming up next, we're going to get into Questions with a Fan, Kansas City Chiefs edition. Joining us now for Questions with a Fan, Kansas City Chiefs edition, is our dear friend, Tyler Albrecht. Tyler, how we doing?
What's going on, fellas?
Hey, man, it's good to see you. Appreciate you joining us. We graduated with Tyler. I played football with him growing up. He was my center, so we had a really good relationship in high school. Yeah.
Sometimes too good.
Yeah, there were some fun moments during those practices, especially when it got cold out. I remember that. But and then for those who don't know, Tyler's dad, Todd, has been on our podcast a couple times already. talking some Chicago Bears. And he might be the podcast #1 fan. So love Todd. It's always nice, Tyler, when I'll just be in the office, working, and I'll be, I'll be engaged in something, and I'll just feel like a zombie. And then I'll just peek at my phone real quick, and it'll be a text from your dad in the morning about something that the Bears are doing or something else going on in the NFL. And I just love that when I can just escape that and talk some ball with him during the day.
Dude, the other day I texted him about Vrabel, and he goes, "Oh, Pat beat you to that by about 10 minutes."
So it's like that. I'll just be going back and forth with your dad, I swear to God, every day, and I love it. It's really fun to talk to him. So Todd, know you're watching right now. I wanted to, Tyler, before we got into talking about your Kansas City Chiefs, so let's talk about, because I value your opinion. I know you know ball. I value your opinion. I want to know, what are you thinking? Everybody who's watched already knows. Tyler is at a point where we're talking about the Chicago Bears, your dad's team. Tyler's at a point where he said, get rid of the coach, get rid of the quarterback. But that's where Tyler was at. Myself, I said, I like Eberflus. I think he's a good defensive coordinator. I think he's a good defensive mind. He really turned around that defense. But I think it's more important to have an offensive minded head coach. Each of our teams has that. We know how special things could be when, things are schemed up right. I just think that's so valuable for a young quarterback. So to me, it was move on from Eberflus, even though, like I said, great defensive mind. But you need an offensive mind head coach come in and really give Justin or Caleb, either one, give them the best chance to succeed. So that's where I was coming from with the coach. And then I said, keep Justin, because I think it's there. I think the talent's there. I just think he needs some help. And he had no chance that last game against Green Bay. Just the protection was so bad. So I'm saying keep Fields, trade that #1 pick, get a boatload, and build your team around Justin, because I think you could succeed doing that. I think the defense is already there. Eberflus is staying with that, but it's huge to me. Biggest thing is finding an offensive coordinator that's going to work for your quarterback. But Tyler, what are your thoughts on all that?
Yeah, it's tough. So going off of what you said about the offensive, minded coach, I personally kind of hate going the defensive route for head coach, because let's say your offense is humming, all of a sudden your OC gets taken away from you every 2 years, and then they have to learn a new system either way. Like look at Dayball with the Bills. Obviously, the Bills turned it around once he left, but it was really a tough time especially at the beginning of this year. So I don't know. Flus has done a pretty good job. Flus, the players love him, like absolutely love him. So my big thing is either they're going to commit to Flus and Fields, or if you're committing to Flus and you draft Caleb, you draft anyone, you're then 3 years with Flus at that point. You're kind of committing to the next 3 years, because really you don't want to ruin one of these guys. You don't want to bring in Caleb and then fire Flus next year, and then all of a sudden you're ruining what a generational prospect is, what everyone's calling him, So I guess my thought is, if you can trade this pick to, let's say, the Commanders or Patriots or whoever end up with the third there, and then flip it into a first next year, still get Marvin Harrison, and then you still get the 9th overall this year. If you have Fields, I think he can win with that, like a loaded roster like that. The problem, I think, with Fields is, when is he going to kind of plateau? Like, he made strides this year, but there's going to come a point he kind of plateaus, and he is what he is too. So you got to trust that he's going to continue to make those strides. And I think they absolutely need to get an OC that they trust. Like I was talking to my dad about, like someone like Pep Hamilton, or someone that's really worked with a lot of these younger QBs, bringing them in and kind of committing to 2-3 years and just saying, hey, we're going to run the offense. We're going to kind of grow and see how far we can get. But I think the biggest issue that they're going to run into is that kind of wishy-washy. They either have to commit to Flus and draft whoever, or if they're keeping Fields, then it's probably a 1 or 2 year thing, and then it's a total rebuild after that. You can't just keep having the QB cycle and head coach cycle totally off on that either. So I don't know. There's no right answer, but they got to be 100% in on whoever they go with. My other issue with Caleb, obviously, he's been great, but there's been times he hasn't been this past year. And look at the success rate for all these QBs coming out. I mean, even Trevor Lawrence, we thought he was a generational talent. And I mean, this year he hasn't been what he should have been. He hasn't taken that step. Justin Herbert, he's been great, but he hasn't taken that step. So, there's no guarantee on that side of it. I think with Fields and you building that team around him, at least they can win. All you got to do is get into the playoffs and then see what happens from there. So I don't know. If it was me, I think I wouldn't be sleeping for the next few months, but I think I would probably consider going with Fields and trading down and just getting a massive haul for that and seeing what happens with Caleb Williams from afar.
Mm-hmm. We're gonna have to have you on more often, because that was nice to listen to. I genuinely agreed with everything you said. When it comes to the draft, I think Ryan Poles knows what he's doing. I think that's something that they have in Chicago, is a capable GM. So to me, I trust whatever he decides. And then talking about Caleb Williams just a little bit before we move on, we've seen some things with him in his college career, and he has been pretty, I don't want to say like pampered, but he's been like, everything's been catered to him in college, to where he's had Lincoln Riley this whole time. Started out at Oklahoma, goes to USC with him. He's had it all set up for him. Like, we've seen what Lincoln Riley does for quarterbacks in college. And when there was that adversity that he faced in college, it seemed like he just broke down mentally, emotionally. I don't know, almost like it was too big for him. And those are things that are huge red flags for me. Obviously, the generational talent from like his skill base, the off-platform throws the dude can make. He's got a cannon. He's got good mobility. He's got like that. They're saying like the next Mahomes, like how he can just evade, escape, and just make something happen like out of nothing. Like, that's what Caleb Williams is capable of. But there's some red flags that I think, do you really throw it away with Justin? And risk that? Because what if like that protection that Justin had last week, Caleb Williams isn't doing anything with that. So when he goes out there on Sunday and he gets pummeled, and I mean pummeled, by a defense that's just in his face all day, and he can't get anything going, and it's cold, and you're down 21, how is that dude going to react on the sideline in front of my team? And to me, Justin Fields, there's been no signs of that. Guy's been an ultimate team guy. I don't see that with Caleb Williams. I really don't. But I don't want to talk too much more about that, because we got a lot more to talk about. All right, let's move on to what you are here for, Tyler, and that is to talk about your beloved Kansas City Chiefs. So,
how about them Chiefs?
As I said earlier in the episode, known you, we've been friends for over 20 years now, and I've known since back in those days when the Chiefs stunk and the Rams stunk, and it was always everybody else's teams that were going to the playoffs, and they were having fun rooting for, and you and I were always just in the dumps year after year. I'll never forget that. And I remember texting you 2018, I believe, when we played that legendary Monday night game, Rams Chiefs. Jared Goff went off, Mahomes went off, and the final score was I don't remember exactly what the final score was, but it was just insane game, back and forth, back and forth. And I remember texting you, and I was like, dude, can you believe this is us right now? Like, this is our two teams right now after what we went through growing up with some of the quarterbacks that we saw and some of the offenses. Like, I remember the Dwayne Bowe days when they had like one receiving touchdown the whole year by wide receiver. And it was just cool to like text you and be like, dude, we fucking made it. And then sure enough, your team wins a Super Bowl. My team wins a Super Bowl. You win another one. It's just crazy to think about. But as I've asked other people that grew up where we came up in upstate New York, how the hell did you become a Kansas City Chiefs fan?
So that I wish I had some cool story to tell. I really don't. So obviously, like you said, my dad being a Bears fan, I had no local like ties to the Bills or the Giants or whoever. You know, we grew up with pretty much all Bills, Giants, and Patriots fans. So growing up, I probably should have became a Bears fan, but luckily dodged that bullet. But so, I mean, there's all the players that I liked to watch when I was a kid, you know, growing up watching Trent Green, Dwayne Bowe, Priest Holmes, Larry Johnson. Like, there was just so many fun players to root for. And then that was when Dick Vermeil was their head coach, and he was like such an easy guy to root for. So like I just kind of latched on at that point. I mean, I've been a Chiefs fan as long as I can remember. The one funny piece of it is, I don't know, it was like 10 years ago or so. We were cleaning out my room, and someone gave me one of those like pages that had like top song when you were born and like, you know, the population when you were born, but it had Monday Night Football that day because I was born on a Monday, and it was Chiefs beat the Raiders. And so that's what my parents always say is how I became a Chiefs fan was, you know, they beat the Raiders Monday night and kind of started everything.
I'll never forget LJ. That dude was a monster. And then after Larry Johnson, you got, or excuse me, I forgot Priest Holmes. So you go from Priest Holmes to LJ, and then you got Jamal Charles. Like that run of running backs for the Chiefs was always amazing. But they just never had like that solid, consistent quarterback play. But I want to ask you, going back to all those teams growing up, who was your favorite player, or maybe a couple of them? Who was like the guy though that you really loved growing up?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, I just named a few, but like the ones that really, really stick out. I mean, Dante Hall. Like, how could you not just be kind of glued to your seat at that point whenever he has the ball? I mean, like everyone's seen the punt return against Denver. I mean, he's a freak. And then as I got a little bit older, went into like Larry Johnson, Jamal Charles. But the ones that really like that kind of middle school, high school region that I just always remember, I had both of their jerseys. Derek Johnson, middle linebacker, he was all over the field. He would take over games. Still should have had a playoff win against the Titans if they didn't do a phantom stopping Mariota's momentum there when it should have been a sack, but you know, not holding on.
That's when Mariota caught his own touchdown, right?
Same game. Yeah. And then the other one, Eric Berry. I mean, how can you not love Eric Berry's story where he got diagnosed with cancer and still came back, still played? The Chiefs head trainer was saying they would weigh him every day and they would just get as much protein in him, get as much kind of like mass gainers in him while he was going through cancer treatment. And they weighed him right in the beginning and right at the end. And he actually gained like 1 pound, like literally 1 pound of muscle by the end of his cancer treatment. So like that guy was just putting in so much work, so much heart. It's just impossible not to root for the guy.
I forgot about Eric Berry. What a legend. And I think for you guys, that turnaround point was when you brought in Andy Reid after he gets fired in Philly. Do you remember like what your initial thoughts were when that happened? Or like, were you excited? Did you feel like, hey, Andy Reid was a really good coach, and I think this is great? I know it's easy to like looking at it now and seeing the success that he's had, but can you take me back to when that first happened?
So to just put it in perspective, growing up where we were with Giants fans and Patriots fans, I was rooting for Tyler Thigpen and Tyler Bray, thinking that those two guys were like the future when the Giants beat the Patriots in the Super Bowl. So like any change was needed. When they brought Andy in, it was actually a really tough time. They went 2-14 the year before. I don't know if you guys really remember it with the whole Javon Belcher story, where he was their middle linebacker, and December of, I think it was 2012 at that point. It was a murder suicide, and in front of Romeo Crennel, in front of Scott Pioli. So there was this really super dark cloud over the team. And like, I don't know why that story, like, I feel like no one really talked about it after that. Like everyone just kind of moved on, but there was a super, super dark cloud over that entire team, entire organization at that point, because it was like at the practice facility. And like, I think they just needed that hard reset. And looking at the coaches that came in that year, so Andy was obviously the most tenured, and then it was guys like Chip Kelly, Bruce Arians. I think the Bears hired Trustman that coaching cycle. So obviously hindsight's 2020, but like looking at it, Andy was really the only choice to kind of take reins and pull them out of that like just dark cloud over the whole franchise. Being an Oregon Ducks fan, I was kind of hoping for Chip Kelly just because I thought it'd be a fun, transition. But I mean, really, I think Andy was the only move for them, just because you knew what you got out of them. Especially going from guys like Todd Haley to Romeo Crennel, you wanted someone with experience winning too.
Todd Haley.
Right. Todd Haley, yeah. He was something.
Yeah.
So you really started to find success with Andy Reid when, they get Alex Smith from San Francisco, who at that point, guy was drafted. He was first overall pick with the Niners, the same draft class as Aaron Rodgers, and he was kind of looked at as a bust for what he did with the Niners. That was fun to watch, that whole Alex Smith era, because he was just completely proving the doubters wrong. And it's like, yeah, Andy is a great offensive mind, but Alex Smith was playing really good quarterback. I remember a game where they went to New England. It was prime time. It was like week 1 or week 2 of the season. It was Kareem Hunt's rookie year, and Alex Smith.
Yeah,
that
was a season opener.
Yep. They just lit him up out there, and they looked so good. Like, the Chiefs' offense looked so good that game. Like, their offense was really good with Alex Smith. And then, obviously, Kelsey comes into the mix, too, and he's a great weapon for him. And that's, when we first started hearing about Kelsey, it was back then. So, going back to that Alex Smith era, where I don't know if it was, to me, it kind of feels like it was, you were in a situation where you were always just going to peak out at a certain point. But looking back at it for you as a Chiefs fan, that whole era, do you feel like that team overachieved, or do you think that, they really left something out there and they could have competed for a Super Bowl and should have?
I think that team had no right competing for a Super Bowl. I think they were probably right where they should have been. I mean, it was a super talented roster, and Andy took over too. They had 6 Pro Bowlers they retained. The defense was actually really, really good with Marcus Peters, Justin Houston, Tom Ali. It was a great team. I just think Alex wasn't going to kill you, but he wasn't going to win games either. Like, he was great for that reset, but I don't see him taking you over the hump, as much as I hate to say it. But I think they probably were right where they should have been. A few wild card appearances, winning the division a couple times, but they had a winning season every year, and that's all I could have asked for, to just be in the hunt, to be competitive in December and January. I was thrilled at that point. So I think they're probably right where they should have been, but I think it was an awesome reset, and I think it's what the whole franchise really needed to get that winning culture back.
Agreed. So you get to that level where you are a winning culture, and then they saw the same thing where it's like, well, we're only going to get to a certain level. They knew that, so they trade up in the draft, take Patrick Mahomes. Going back to, though, when they drafted him, they trade up for him. Did you really get to see him at all at Texas Tech, or did you have any strong feelings about him then?
So when they traded, it's kind of funny. When they traded up, I actually wanted them to stay where they were and take Tre'Davious White, which would have been a fine pick. But the Bills ended up taking with that pick. But I mean, honestly, yes, I knew exactly who he was. I knew, the Chiefs were interested. I knew they were actually really doing their homework on him. They were scouting him pretty early on, but at the time, I mean, obviously I didn't know that. Realistically, when they moved up, I thought they were taking Deshaun Watson. I think Deshaun Watson made the most sense at that point too. The proven winner in college, he had all the attributes. So I actually kind of thought they weren't going Mahomes at all. Obviously, I knew what his game was like. We saw the game against him and Baker Mayfield where they combined for 1,100 yards or something stupid. But I really didn't expect them to take him there. I thought that big of a trade up was for Watson. I thought if they're going to go Mahomes, they were going to trade up to 18, 19, 20, somewhere in that ballpark, and not give up next year's first for it. it turns out that the Saints wanted him at 11 anyways. So I think they kind of had to trade up to where they did. But yeah, no, I mean, honestly, I wish I could say, yeah, I saw this coming a mile away. I just knew he was that raw prospect. He was that guy that had a cannon for an arm and could make every throw, but also was fairly raw. But then looking back on it, you look at, those Texas Tech teams, and all of a sudden you're realizing there's not a ton of talent on those teams either. So, him making an error, throwing a pick, very well could have been on the receivers too. So, looking back on it, obviously it seems like the obvious pick, but no, I really didn't see it coming.
It's crazy. He just takes off. Tyler, anything you want to throw in? Tyler Pratt?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, can you imagine if Kansas City didn't take him and then Sean Payton got his hands on him? Like, that's another interesting avenue that could have been Mahomes' career is in New Orleans with Sean Payton. But yeah, that's really it.
I want to talk about that 2018 season. We talked about the legendary Monday night game where Chiefs Rams, and Mahomes won MVP this year. They get all the way to the AFC title game, host the New England Patriots, Tom Brady. I remember it was a shitty weather game, and they were in it down to the wire. They get an interception late in that game that would have sealed it, if I'm not mistaken. And D Ford had jumped offsides. So the Patriots got another opportunity, end up beating them. Going back to that team in 2018, just talk to me about like what it was like seeing that offense just putting up fireworks like week after week after week. And you're like, holy shit, like that's my quarterback for the next, 10 plus years. Like this guy is incredible. This is so fun to watch. I can't believe like we're here right now. And then you get all the way to the AFC title game, and you got a real shot to get to the Super Bowl. You have it. You jump off sides. Take me back to like your whole emotional experience that season.
Yeah, so obviously, again, hindsight's 2020, but the whole first half of the season, I really wasn't 100% like wholeheartedly convinced that Mahomes was who he is. I knew what he looked like in training camp. I knew what he looked like in preseason, but he came out so good so early. Like, okay, how much of this is Andy Reid scheming him up? They had a good receiving core at that point. They had a fairly good offense in general at that point. So how much is really, Mahomes becoming what he is? And then realistically, probably about that, Rams game was when I realized, okay, he's staying in this game. The Rams are just throttling the defense, but Mahomes is keeping them in this game. Like that's what they've needed for so long. Even after, I think he threw 1 or 2 picks in that game. Like both quarterbacks turned the ball over in that game a couple times, but he stayed in it. And like, that's what you see now is that where you're never out of it. So yeah, I actually think that Rams game was probably the turning point where in my head I was like, what, this guy's legitimately probably will be the future of the franchise there. Yeah, you get all the way to the AFC title game, and then you said they were in it to the wire, but they really the first half, if I remember correctly, they were shut out or they only scored 3. So they ended up losing the game. All they needed was get it going a little sooner in the game, and who cares with the interception? It would have been a totally different game. So, you look back on it like, man, D Ford cost us whatever, but really that first half game plan is what kind of haunts them more than anything. Because I truly think if they win that game, they'll probably win that Super Bowl. Like it was just heartbreaking to watch D Ford go, to see the flag and to know it was D Ford because he was battling injuries at that time. His career with the Chiefs was kind of close to an end and everyone knew it. And to see that he was the one that cost it, like it was, as a fan, I was kind of heartbreaking because like, man, I wanted him to succeed so bad. That pass rush just hasn't been good all year, and have that be the error to actually cost it when really, I mean, if they scored anything in the first half, it would have been a totally different game. But yeah, it was unreal. It was unreal because really, like I said, I was growing up, I'm thinking Tyler Thigpen, Tyler Bray, even going back to Trent Green, I thought all those guys were, face of the franchise. We're going to be good forever. And then, to actually
Matt Castle
Matt Castle is putting his hat on the sidelines and having to fall off his head to, epitomize that whole era. To have that and realize that it was an unreal roller coaster.
Going back to that AFC title game, compare that. I want to fast forward to 2021. Compare that loss in that AFC title game to the Patriots to that loss at home against Cincinnati.
Percent different. The Patriots was like genuinely like a down moment. Like I hated the Patriots at that point. They were always going to be the ones to knock out the Chiefs, and they hadn't been anywhere. All of a sudden you get the success in the playoffs. They hadn't been anywhere, and that was an overtime game, or right? I think it came down to OT with the Patriots ran it in. So, thinking you have a chance all the way to the end, and then just watching Tom Brady orchestrate a drive all the way down the field. Mahomes doesn't touch the ball, and it was just heartbreaking. Versus you look at like the Bengals loss, that was frustrating. Like that's a team that should not have lost. There's no excuse for them losing that game. They were up, 21 or 24 nothing going into half there, and the play, I don't know if you remember, where they threw to Tyreek. It was like second goal or whatever right before halftime, and they threw to Tyreek, and he stayed in bounds, and clock expired, and all of a sudden they lose in an OT game. I mean, like, come on, just get the points. You're getting too cute with it, Andy, which is always everyone's critique for him. But just get the points and just throttle them in the second half, But then all of a sudden they took their foot off the gas, and then they stopped running the ball for whatever reason. And it was just a frustrating loss because they really had no excuse losing that game. And they kind of deprived us from the 2018 rematch with the Rams in the Super Bowl there.
I was just about to say, like, we were that close to playing each other in the Super Bowl that year. And 2021, that game against the Bengals, we had Justin Forbes on talking about the Bengals earlier in the season, and I talked about that specific play during that Super Bowl run for them. I was like, that specific play in that game was the ultimate turning point, because exactly what I said, same words. I said, Kansas City had the game. They got way too cute going into half, don't get it. And you could see literally immediately after that play, you could just see like the down heads, for the Chiefs. And Cincinnati is rowdy. They're all riled up going into that tunnel. And they were still down, I think 3 possessions maybe. But you could just feel at that point, like getting a stop there. Hey, we're not getting our doors blown off here. Like, we came to compete at least. And Tyreek stays in bounds. That was the ultimate turning point. They come back in that game, win. And I just thought that was like devastating for Kansas City, that loss, to give that up. Because like you said, they had no business losing that game with what they were doing in that first half, just getting whatever they wanted. Tyreek looked unstoppable. The whole offense looked unstoppable. It was crazy to see, McPherson put that through the uprights. And it's like, damn, the Bengals are going to the Super Bowl right now. But I want to move on to 2019, the year you do get it done. This is your first Super Bowl as a fan. Like we said, we came up, our teams were not good. Talk about that year, where like that whole journey, and then you go to the Super Bowl in Miami against the 49ers. You're down at half, and Mahomes puts on a show. The second half comes all the way back. You beat the 49ers in the Super Bowl. Take me back to that season. And in that moment, did you feel like, hey, we just lost the AFC title game last year. Now we won a Super Bowl. We got this going on. Like, we see what Mahomes is. Like, is this a dynasty in the making? Did you feel like that?
Yeah, so going back to that year, so you come off that loss to the Patriots, and then they started the year, I think they were 6-4, 6-5, somewhere in that ballpark. So they started the year, I mean, winning record, but not where you would have thought they would have started. You're thinking, 8-1, somewhere in that ballpark. So all of a sudden, the doubters start to kind of creep in. You're doubting Mahomes a little bit. You're like, okay, was last year a fluke? Where are we at this year? And then they get into the playoffs, and again, not really lighting the world on fire, but they started to get hot towards the end of the year. And then they played, what was it? The Texans they're down 24-0. And then that was in the first half, and they went into halftime. I remember correctly, it was 24-21. And then all of a sudden you realize, okay, no, they can actually handle this. And then they had the Titans game, where that was they're down forget what it was. It was 2 possessions again. And then Mahomes has that 27-yard, 30-yard TD run that he's doing. He's spinning off of guys. And, so they came back from a lot. Both of those games, they came back from a lot. Team overcame a lot to get there. And then you put them in the Super Bowl, they're still down 2 possessions. So, that's where it started, the thoughts where as long as Mahomes has the ball and has time, I'm not that worried. And it really kind of spoiled me as a fan, because now even I watch games and I'm like, okay, it's 2 possessions, 6 minutes left. I'm sure they'll find a way to get it done. Really, until this past year, it's been kind of no doubt because of that. But yeah, it was unreal watching, because really up until that point, I didn't have that faith in the team. But then when they ran the wasp play to Tyreek with, I forget what it was midway through the 4th quarter of the Super Bowl, and then they hit the touchdown to Damian Williams, that point you realize, okay, this is legit. This is probably could be a dynasty. Not saying it's the start of a dynasty, but it absolutely could be, because they're young. Kelsey was still in his 20s at that point, or just turned 30. Tyreek was young. The running backs, the whole room was young. So you thought, okay, yeah, this team could absolutely turn into some sort of dynasty if everything goes according to plan.
And it was looking like that the next season. It was just they continue to roll. They will go 14-2 the next season after winning the Super Bowl. They get all the way to the Super Bowl again. So it's the Chiefs are the new Patriots. That's how they were being looked at. And you lose that game to the Bucks in the Super Bowl, 31-9. It was, where they just completely got after Mahomes, and a lot of people weren't giving Tampa Bay a chance in that game, and their defense completely took over. I'll never forget it. Mahomes was under duress the entire game, and he was having to make these ridiculous, unbelievable throws where he was diving in midair and still getting it off, and it was always accurate, but somebody would be dropping it. You know what I mean? The most ridiculous throws I can remember him making in that game. Pretty dominant performance by their defense, and the Chiefs just looked outmatched up front in that game. And obviously you lose that game, and then that's when Andy completely rebuilds the O-line. But how were your feelings after that Super Bowl loss and that whole season in general?
Yeah, so you bring up a great point with the acrobatic throws and everything. So the one that I distinctly remember was Mahomes being literally parallel to the ground, getting the ball off, and there was 2 big drops in the game. I think this was Damian Williams. It could have been Tyreek, but it hit him in the face mask. It literally hit the receiver in the face mask as Mahomes is parallel to the ground. It would have been at the goal line. And it's as soon as that play happened, I realized there's no chance. There's no way. The cards are not going to fall for this one. But in some regards, so that Super Bowl loss, they were down 3 offensive linemen. They were down both their tackles, both season-ending injuries with Fisher and Schwartz. And both of those guys were done after that year. So in some regards, I was almost, in a way, glad they got blown out and embarrassed, as opposed to a close loss, because the fear with creating a dynasty is the complacency, right? Of just being happy that you're always in it. But that loss, I think, kind of lit a fire under Andy, but also Brett Veach, the general manager, who totally overhauled the offensive line, spent draft capital on them, brought in Joe Tooney, at the time the biggest contract for a guard ever. Following year, they went out and got Orlando Brown. So they totally retooled that offensive line, and now it is a strength. Their tackles are weak this year, and part of it's injury, part of it's play. But their interior offensive line, who all guys are under contract for at least another year here, I would put that up against any team. So I think that really did light a fire under them. My feelings during the game, it was brutal to watch. I hated every second of it, but it still showed, Mahomes has the arm talent, has the creativity to do whatever. So, I was still confident in the team going into the following year. I mean, they went 14-2. You have to have some sort of confidence. So that retooling, I think, was the biggest piece of it.
Right. And that next year, we mentioned earlier, 2021, you get to the AFC title game, talk about that play against the Bengals. They end up losing to Cincinnati. But I can't talk about that year without talking about the 13-second miracle against the Bills. Take me back to that game for you, because that was an unbelievable heartbreak that Bills fans will never forget. And that's something that you always have over them. So take me back to that game.
Before we grew up, I mean, Bills fans are everywhere. I went to college in Rochester. Bills fans are everywhere. I have multiple group texts with just Bills fans, and I was getting roasted in like multiple chains, like multiple group texts after Gabe Davis had his fourth touchdown. So at that point, I was so salty about it that I almost just turned the TV off. It's like, all right, I'm going to bed. I have to work the next morning. It is what it is. But I mean, that was one point I realized that there was no chance. Especially watching Gabe Davis just run wide open. Like that secondary was brutal that year. But then watching them actually orchestrate that, and the first play was Tyreek, I believe, where they had him run and just go, and then instantly you see Kelsey follow behind him with a call timeout. And then the next one is the 1-2 Kelsey, where you just hear Mahomes screaming, "Kels, do it, Kels, do it." So there wasn't anything designed. He just told him to run the seam, and he just threw it, trusted he was there, and then Butker hit that. It was such a roller coaster. But as soon as it was, the Tyreek catch, I thought, okay, there is a chance to actually get into field goal range. And then as soon as it went to OT, there's no way the Bills were coming back from that. It was such a momentum shift. I mean, that team was kind of hanging their head at that point. Like, there was no chance.
I want to talk about that following offseason. You trade Tyreek Hill. And I understand it because you got to pay the quarterback, and Tyreek's going to cost a hell of a lot of money. So, hey, let's get these picks and, build the rest of our roster, build our defense up. Going back to that, like, were you pissed?
So it's kind of tough. I mean, Tyreek is a polarizing person as well. I mean, there's been some pretty not, great allegations against him as well. But no, looking back on it, it wasn't between paying Mahomes or, that was going to happen either way. It was between paying Chris Jones or Tyreek. They weren't going to pay both. The picks that they got from Tyreek, they ended up getting Trent McDuffie, which threw a trade again to the Patriots. But generally that pick was Trent McDuffie, and they got Sky Moore. Sky Moore has probably been a bust. I mean, realistically, he's in his second year. He's probably been a bust. But Trent McDuffie, I would rank as like a top probably 20, 25 corner in the league. I would take
Great nickel
plus the money. Yeah, for sure. So I'd take that plus the money any day of the week. They got a Super Bowl out of it. And quite frankly, if, like Tyler, if I set out, get rid of Dak and get rid of CD for a Super Bowl, I think you'd consider it, even if it was just one, So looking back on it, I have no problems with it. Was I worried? Yeah. But it was a different roster too. Looking at it this year, yeah, I would kill to have Tyreek on my team right now. But yeah, no, I think it worked out honestly for both teams.
Yeah, and it's going to be a reunion. It's going to be a party this weekend. Tyreek back in Kansas City. Unfortunately for him, it looks like it's going to be freezing. So we could talk about that game in a little bit. I want to go through along this timeline with you. So last year without Tyreek, somehow you pull it off. You weren't looked at like as that same explosive team, but you were still getting it done, finding a way to win because of Mahomes' greatness. You get all the way to the Super Bowl again. You're down again, and you come back and win it in Arizona, where I got to see you and catch up with you. We were both out there watching the Super Bowl. Not at the game, unfortunately, but it was a pretty nice watch party we had going on. Take me back to last season, though, like that run that you go on, and just like the comparison of that Super Bowl run and then the one you made where you ended up beating the 49ers.
Going to touch the Niners win. And because, again, you're looking at it as, well, this is kind of expected. They should make a deep playoff run. Even this year, like let's say they lose on Saturday, which they very well could, that's an absolute failure of a season versus the Texans looking at their season. They're thrilled, So it's just expected at that point. So nothing's going to touch the Niners. They weren't expected to be there. Everyone was rooting for Andy Reid. Now really nobody is. Nobody's rooting for Mahomes. So, it's a different, very different feel. Yeah, last year it was interesting. So MVS, who has had like 20 catches this year and probably close to that in drops, it feels like, played a huge role last season. He had over 100 yards against the Bengals in the AFC Championship game. He had pretty crucial catches against the Eagles. But the big thing that, like, looking at that playoff run, so watching the Jags game, that first game of the playoff run, when Mahomes had the high ankle sprain, it looked like he was like done. And then it looked like the Chiefs were done, really. And then Chad Henne drove it 98 yards down the field. I think that is the biggest play of that run. Without it, I don't think they leave the first weekend of the playoffs. And then you look at the Bengals game, L'Jarius Sneed, their number one corner, gets a concussion like 4 plays in. And then you look at the Bengals receiving court and you think, okay, they're just going to start shredding them. But then Chris Jones starts to take over. And then what the Chiefs also have done is just drafted a bunch of corners. They haven't taken anyone high other than Trent McDuffie, but they've drafted a bunch of corners and just hope that they kind of stick. And they ended up starting their 3 corners and a rookie safety, all first-year guys, and they played phenomenal that game. They played phenomenal in the Super Bowl even. So you're trusting all these young guys with Spags, who sets them up in positions to succeed by getting Chris Jones pressures, by getting corner blitzes that have quick pressures. So that was the biggest turning point, was really that Chad Henne drive, and then that young secondary stepping up. And then you look at how that translates into this year is, again, the defense stepping up and the offense really not. So, it's tough to say, but realistically looking at the receiving core, Juju was, I think, underrated in that room. He was that third down guy that wasn't Kelsey, that they could trust to get to the sticks and just sit there and find that opening. Versus you look at like Sky Moore this year, MVS this year, Tony this year. None of them are finding the openings in the defense. None of them are having that unscripted, just creativity type plays. And I think that's what's really hurting them compared to last year when Juju was able to do that. Kelsey was doing it, obviously. So I think that's the biggest difference between the 2 years.
Let's get on. We've been talking about this year. Let's wrap it up and talk about this year's team. Once again, it's been a blast talking to you. Appreciate you coming on. It's been a wild season for the Kansas City Chiefs. A lot of drama going on, talking about sideline drama, yelling at the refs. And we're talking about Travis Kelce's got a girlfriend, Taylor Swift, who's sitting up in the press box. And now his podcast is taken off completely. He's everybody's household name. Like, all the Swifties are watching football because of it. There's just so much attention on the Kansas City Chiefs this season because of all of this going on. Can't wait to hear what you have to say about that. And then we're talking about Kadarius Toney, the drama that's going on in him, a couple of games where he's really cost the team. The wide receiver group as a whole right now, just, I don't know how as a fan you would be confident at all in that group. Talk about Sky Moore, and I agree. Dude just looks like I don't see it. Looks like a bust at this point. Rashee Rice is a real problem. Like, that hit on that dude, great player. But anyways, I want to hear about your opinion on everything I just mentioned. And then, do you think this team, are they dead? Do they have a chance in this playoffs?
So that's a lot to unpack. So let's talk about the drama first. So it's super frustrating as a fan. It's super frustrating for a few reasons. One, again, going back to being a longtime fan, you remember the years with Alex Smith. Everyone was like, man, maybe the Chiefs can do it. I'm really hoping the Chiefs pull it off. And now all of a sudden, everyone just is so sick of them. And that it's becoming that Patriots hate that everyone's just like, oh my gosh, I'm just sick of them. But I think so. Let's talk about the Kelsey and Taylor Swift thing. That's not on either of them. That's on the NFL just milking it. I mean, they show how many times they cut to her in the press box. She hasn't done anything to announce anything. I mean, she just shows up to the games and hangs out in, the Kelsey suite or whatever, and that's it. So I don't know what you want them to do other than keep it quiet, but I don't think you should force two 30-something-year-olds to have to keep it quiet, So that piece, I blame the NFL on that wholeheartedly. I'm sure it's annoying for them too.
National media as a whole.
Yeah, for sure. They know it'll get clicks. I mean, that's a big thing. Travis today said he's not planning on retiring anytime soon. I actually think he's going after Tony Gonzalez's yard record at this point because he's like, 3 or 4,000 off. So if he's not retiring anytime soon, I think he's going to be eyeing something for the long haul. And to say it now before a playoff run, I don't know. It's a very weird timing. But then getting into like the Mahomes yelling at the refs and all that piece was, again, super frustrating as a fan. Obviously, he shouldn't have been behaving the way he did, yelling at the refs and all that. Super emotional game, though. And that team was so frustrated at that point. Literally the week before is when MVS got just destroyed by Green Bay. He got tackled essentially at the 5-yard line or whatever, and the refs didn't call it. So the officiating this year as a whole has been bad across the league. It's been inconsistent. I mean, we've seen it just with the Lions game, a couple weeks ago. It's been super inconsistent. So I think the refs were the scapegoat at that point. And that was a really easy way for, Mahomes to not just say, hey, the receiving corps is letting me down. I think that was the easy scapegoat to kind of bring everyone together and to try to right the ship. I think the part of it that really bugs me the most was him going up to Josh after, and Josh looking at him and being like, what do you want from me, buddy? Like, I know they're friends, and who knows what Josh said to him, but it was just a weird look. But again, I think it was just frustration boiling over, and that was the easy kind of scapegoat on that.
Like Brady had his meltdowns too. So, and I feel like nobody was ever giving him shit about it either. So going back to Kelsey though, Tyler, I think he looks a little washed up right now. What do you think?
So one quick thing going back to it, not to just keep going back to it, but Brady, that was the big thing was Brady. I mean, I distinctly remember him running after the refs to the tunnel against the Panthers on some stupid like Monday night game or whatever. This is the first PR moment that Mahomes has looked bad, like really, like him personally has looked bad in. And I think that's where a lot of the media kind of jumped on it too. Jackson, Brittany, all of that wasn't bad. So I think this is the first bad PR moment. So I think that's
what are your thoughts on those two? Sorry to interrupt. I don't want to forget this. What are your thoughts on those two?
We'll talk about Jackson first because that's easier. I mean, he sexually harassed or assaulted a woman on camera. Like, I don't really have much love for him. He's a kid. Or was a kid. He's not a kid anymore. So like when he was doing the TikTok dances, whatever. He was like 18. Like, I'm sure if you or I, our older brother, was Patrick Mahomes, I'd be doing something embarrassing too. I might not be doing TikTok dances on midfield or whatever. But now after the footage, I don't really have much love for him. But Brittany, I think, is tough. Pat grew up, his dad played in the major leagues, so he knew how to be a pro a whole lot more than Brittany did. But they got together in high school. She is kind of the ultimate ride or die to an annoying point. Like she will 100% back Pat and do everything for him to the point where everyone else is annoyed around her. But I think she's 100% supportive of him. She's been much quieter the past 2 years, much less out of the public eye the past 2 years. Compared to the 2018 to 2021 years, I think she's been a lot quieter.
She's dumping drinks on people.
That was before. That was like 3 years ago at this point.
No, I'm saying, that was when.
Yeah. No. So that's the big thing is like, I think that Pat probably sat her down and was like, well, and they went through some PR training together, and she has been better. But I think she is who she is too. And I think at the end of the day, she's a ride or die for Pat, and whether it's good, bad, or indifferent, I don't think she really cares.
I wasn't gonna bring up Brittany Mahomes, but I had to.
That's the first thing everyone wants to talk about. And I mean,
Yeah.
at the end of the, I cheer for the team, not the supporting cast. I guess I don't know.
She just annoyed the shit out of me in that Netflix special. I hated, like, every time Mahomes was at home, I was like, oh my god, let's move on, please.
I'm just so glad Jackson wasn't part of that.
Yeah, right. But again, Mahomes came out of it looking good, and then everyone around him didn't. So, like, I don't know. It's tough. I mean,
oh yeah,
as long as they're happy,
and
I guess.
I still have nothing against Mahomes. Like, for that whole thing that he did, is what it is. Like you said, that was the first moment where you really saw him like blow up and make himself look bad. So I don't have like any hate for Patrick Mahomes. I'm not sitting there rooting for them to lose and like, oh my God, I'm so sick of their dominance, because they haven't been like that. They haven't been that team like that you hate, like that you want to hate because like they did something wrong or anything. It's just been a great team to watch, fun team to watch. And yes, the Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce shit is super annoying. And may that may want me to be like, oh my God, I just don't want the Chiefs to play anymore because I'm done listening to this. So like that is something. But besides that, and the team as a whole, like there's no ill will towards the Chiefs. I'm not like sick of them winning or anything. I have all the respect in the world for Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid. But I want to dive more into this season, this playoff matchup against the Dolphins this week. How confident are you going into that game? And then maybe you're not too worried about Miami, but after that, like, can this team make a deep run? I know you got a great defense. Bolton's back, who's a baller, but there's just not been consistent rhythm with that offense. So what do you think about their chances?
There's no reason to be confident in this offense going into this game. I think Miami's the best draw other than the Steelers. I think Miami's the best draw for them for the first game just because of everything from weather and all that. But at the end of the day, I mean, Raheem Mostert, Achane, all their running game is phenomenal in Miami. So I think that they can absolutely pull it off. I think the difference is their defense is just destroyed with injuries. I mean, their pass rushers right now are Melvin Ingram, and I think they just signed Justin Houston. Like, that's their edge rushers for this game. So, you know, if the Chiefs lose to the Dolphins this week, I'm almost glad they didn't have to play the Bills again or didn't have to play the Ravens, because it would have been embarrassing. Because, I mean, really, the Dolphins I actually feel for their injury luck. But that offense, I think, will still put up points. They got Jalen Waddle back, or should have Jalen Waddle back. They'll have Mostert back. I think that could turn into a little bit of a track meet, as much as it can be for a game that's like minus 15 degrees with wind chill. But at the same time, if they get it together on offense, it's a championship caliber defense. I mean, there's no reason that they can't get a little bit of a run going. Again, they only lost to the Bills by 3. They haven't gotten blown out in any game this year. I mean, their biggest loss, I think, was still 2 possessions. It was like a 15-point loss. So that's where I feel more confident in them than I maybe do like Philly, who has gotten blown out a few times, or a team like that, just because of the defense. But yeah, if the offense can't get it right this weekend, then even if they win, there's no chance going forward. They have to have some sort of success going forward here, which they did a little bit to end the year too. And having a rest week last week, I think, will help them.
It's interesting you say that. You're thinking track meet, because Tyler and I, beginning of this episode, when we were going through the games and talking about our leans, I said I absolutely love the under in this game. Maybe it's just me, maybe it's an outlier, but I think the combination of the weather and just how the Chiefs' offense hasn't clicked, I could see both teams really trying to utilize the run game in this game. So I think we're not going to have like these super explosive plays, quick drives. I think it's going to be more of a ground and pound kind of game than people think. Like, I know we think about like Dolphins, Chiefs, like these are two, high powered teams, but these teams could run the football, and Pacheco's back now. So that's huge. I love Pacheco to score a touchdown in that game as well. I think the Chiefs win this game, though. I think, like you said, the Dolphins are just way too banged up on the edge to generate any kind of pressure on Mahomes. and I think they get that run game going. T. Pratt, what chances are you giving this Kansas City Chiefs team of winning this week, and then if you think they can win this week, making another Super Bowl run?
I think I'm 50-50 on them winning. I think the Dolphins are +4, maybe +4.5, depending on what book. So I like the Dolphins with the points, but as far as who's going to win the matchup, I don't really know, especially with it being so cold. But I did, like you pointed out, I like the under on the total because normally when it's cold, right, ball doesn't travel as far. Teams aren't really taking those deep shots. They're really just trying to run the ball, get rhythm, maybe, get some short passes in there. So I think that you're going to see some 6, 7, 8-minute drives in this game, especially if it's a long scoring drive. So I think that the clock chews a little bit, and we might not see 50 points in this one. But as far as a playoff run, I think the offense has just been too inconsistent. You never count out Mahomes, of course, because he's just, he's Mahomes. So you can never count him out. But with the defense, they're going to give him a shot. You got a great defense. You have one of the best, if not the best, quarterbacks. So you're going to have a shot to win every game. But just the offense as a whole has just been too inconsistent for me to kind of feel confident in them making a deep playoff run.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Like, it's hard to bet against Mahomes, but it's hard to see this team just like magically turning it on with the group that they have on offense. Like I said, Kelsey just, to me, doesn't look like the same dude. I don't know if those injuries are caught up and he just needs some time to recover, whatever it is. But I think they give their team the best chance if they run their offense through Pacheco, because he's a problem. And if you take that pressure off Mahomes by being able to just pound Pacheco in the run game and then get Edwards-Helaire involved or McKinnon, whoever, like when you get those backs going, it's a really tough offense to stop. And the Dolphins defense is so banged up right now. Boys, this has been a blast. It's been a great time catching up with you, Tyler Albrecht. Thanks, man, for coming on, talking some Chiefs with us. Best of luck to you this weekend. Best of luck on this playoff run. I wonder what the odds for a Chiefs-Rams Super Bowl would be this year. It would be interesting.
I mean, if you're betting on it, you better get some pretty good odds in your favor. But we'll see. Hoping for it. It'd be awesome. But yeah, no, appreciate you guys. Good to catch up with y'all, and hopefully we'll be talking about Chiefs-Rams here in a few weeks.
Hey, if you do make that Super Bowl run, we're gonna definitely have you on again here in about a month. So be ready for that. But Tyler, thanks again, buddy. It's been a blast. Have a great night.
Yeah, appreciate it, fellas.
Thank you, brother.
That was Questions with a Fan. Once again, thank you again, Tyler, for hopping on with us, talking some Kansas City Chiefs. Real good time catching up with him. This is it for our episode of Super Wildcard Weekend and Questions with a Fan. We hope everybody enjoys some playoff football this weekend. We will be back with you next week to recap this week's games and next week's matchups. So we will see you then. Goodbye.
Peace.
I did it again. Oh my God. I looped it.
You're a fucking looper.
Fuck.
When I come to your city, I'm a new score. Broke your high score soon as I step through the door. Tryna stack my paper up like a bookstore. Money kissing each other like a rock and roll tour. When I come to your city, I'm a new score. Broke your high score soon as I step through the door. Tryna stack my paper up like a bookstore. Money kissing each other like a rock and roll.